Hello, this is Joelle with Trigram Support, and this is the first of several videos to walk you through how to set up your AcuBase demo. So when you open AcuBase, you're probably going to be on a screen just like this one, which is the splash screen. From here, we're first going to go to the little tool wrench in the upper right corner where your basic settings are. So let's go ahead and click on that tool wrench. And so here what we're going to do is set up all the tabs that are under the tool wrench. The first tab is the company tab. On the left-hand side, you have your company information. Please note that the first field is available, and then all the fields below, starting from the email down, are also available for you to modify on this left-hand side. However, the address, you're going to have to modify it on the bottom right-hand side here. Just go ahead and click on the default address here and just modify that with your address, your practice address, and then go ahead and click on Make Default. If you have multiple offices, you can set up multiple address here, and later on as you create Superbill, you'll be able to change the default address to one of the other address that you set up. On the right hand side is where you're going to set up your provider information. So go ahead and delete the demo provider, which is probably not a different name than what I have here, and go ahead and click on New Provider. You'll see that the information that you've entered under the company info will already default to the different lines here, and each line will tell you where that will go on the CMS form. So at the top here under name, go ahead and enter your name. And for those of you who bill under your name rather than your practice name, you may want to change this here then to your name. By default, it will pick up your practice name, but not all of you bill under your practice name. All right, then you'll have to fill out the rest that's not been preset anywhere else, and that's your federal tax ID number, and then go ahead and check whether that's your EIN or Social Security. This ID number here is for your state license. Not everyone uses a state license anymore, so if you don't wish to have your state license reflecting either on your Superbill or in box 33B of the CMS, you can leave this blank. The next fields are for your NPI number. If you don't have a company NPI, just simply repeat your provider NPI. This here below is a place where you can enter options that some insurance company may give you. They may give you a number that they would like you to use in box 33B. Let's take an example here, Blue Shield. Just go ahead and enter whatever number they give you, and make sure that you enter something here in the description so that you'll be able to see this value in the drop menu. Let's click on the back button here in the upper right to go back to our tabs. Under the General tab, there's not much that you're going to do here under the Setting tab. What you may want to do is change the upon opening go to. You may want to choose either Patients or Calendar. There's nothing really to do in the splash screen, so you probably want to get out of there. You can also modify the screen viewing size here, and then click on the adjust button here to make it permanent. Account management, setting up accounts with user login and password. I will be doing a separate video in the future on that. If you need to do that, you can always email me and I can send you written instructions on how to do that. HIPAA log file, if you wish to turn that on, go ahead and turn that on. And that's pretty much it for this area for right now. Activities, this is where you can set up your notes template. You'll see that we have a bunch of samples here. And if you don't like text, you can modify the text. You can add your own list of notes, and you can just delete what we have here. Just simply click on the down arrow here, go to Edit, and then you can go to the next line and you can just add your own titles, Once you've added a value, you can pick up that note, and then you can copy paste maybe a Word document that you have into this area here, which would be then your template. So this is where you store your template. The report tab, not much to do that now because you don't know your reports yet, but this is an area that you can come to later on, and you can exclude reports that you know you won't be using so that they simply don't crowd your list. This is a very long list of reports. Some of these reports are fairly similar, it's just the layout of it is different. And so everybody has their own preferences, and as you become familiar with the reports, you'll probably want to come here and exclude those that you're not going to be using so that you can narrow down your list. On to the calendar tab. The calendar tab has some basic settings here, but you'll have more settings within the calendar file itself. So here is where you can set up your staff list with your default appointment length. Basically what that will do is that when you schedule someone from the calendar, there'll be a little, you'll be able to select your staff member, and it will just simply put an end time to your patient's appointment. So some of you may not want an end time, in which case this is not necessary to set. Resource is for a specific tab under the calendar view, and it's called the schedule view. And under the schedule view, you're going to have your resource aligned in columns, and you can schedule from there as opposed to scheduling from the daily or weekly view. So when we'll get to the calendar part of this demo, you'll see what I mean by the schedule view, and you can then decide if this is something that you would like to use. If you're in single practitioner rooms, is probably what you want to set up as a resource. In offices with multiple practitioners, you may decide that it'd be more useful to have practitioners as your resource. And then down here we have some very basic settings. We have this pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to the billing tab, we have three sub-tabs here. The first one is the billing codes tab. This is where you'll find your list of CPT and ICD code. Notice that we already have the list of ICD-10 codes, excuse me, as we were ready for this October, but they've changed the date to October of 2015. So for right now, you'll be using your ICD-9 codes list. For those of you who are not seeing this list of ICD-10 codes, please contact me, and I will send you, I will either update your demo if you've already entered data, or I will send you the new files with this update here. So for your codes, these are just some codes that we've been pre-entering in the list of CPT. You can go to Show as List here. This is a much better way to take a look at this list. And what I recommend is that you set up your prices for the codes that you're going to be using, and then just go ahead and delete by clicking on the trash can here, codes that you're not going to be using. Just really, there is no reason to have a list of codes that you're not going to be using. You can always re-enter a code later on if you need to. If there is a code that has a same code that has multiple fee schedule, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the description is slightly different. For example, here I have 97810 has already been entered as an acupuncture code. So if let's say you have a discounted price for that, you would re-enter your code here, your description, and then something slightly different so that you can recognize it from your drop menu. If you don't make it different from the original description, then it will only show one value in the drop menu. So I definitely recommend that you customize your list of ICD code, get rid of those that you don't use, and set up all your prices for those that you do use, and then go ahead and add those that may not be in this list. For the ICD-9 codes, what you notice here is that all these codes are currently checked. It's a very long list of codes. However, when you get to your patient's billing preferences set up, you'll be able to either type the first few digits of the code and it it will drop you down to that part of the list. Or you can decide to customize your list of ICD codes, in which case you're going to want to click on select all/none. You're going to want to uncheck all your codes. It's going to take a little while because it's a very long list of codes. And then I'll show you how to customize. So now all our codes are unchecked. If the codes are not checked, that means they're not going to appear in your drop menu. Let's now go to show as list. Because we also have the ICD-10 here, what we're going to have to do is just ignore the ICD-10 for right now. So at the top menu here, you have a find icon, and that's generally how you would do search for anything to get a search screen in AcuBase. Use this find icon rather than the internal search button. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to give me a blank screen that's equal to the screen that I was on. Let's do a search for, let's say, 724. I recommend that you search by 3-digit codes so that you'll get the list of all the codes that fall under that category. I'm going to click on Perform Find. And I know that I'm looking at my ICD-9 codes because if any of these codes were ICD-10, this box would be checked here. So you can then go ahead and check the Use box for those codes that you would like to use. So that's how you would basically build your list of codes. You can also search on a string. For example, here you can put the word pain. Click the Perform Find, and all your pain code would then appear. Of course, here we have all the ICD-10 pain code that are appearing first, so you're going to have to scroll down until you get to your ICD-9, which will not have a check mark in the front box here. And then you can just go ahead and check those that you think that you'll be using. And that's how you customize that list. Okay, now second sub-tab here, the default values. This is a place where you can decide to, let's say all of your patients always come for a specific code, and you know that all your patients are going to have that code in common. Then you may want to preset that code in this list here so that when you create a patient's file, a case automatically gets assigned to that file, and this value would already be preset. So we would cut down on your input in your patient's case detail. So that's what you would want to do here, is only preset a value that might be common to most patients. And by the way, coming back to this here, whether you're setting this up under Superbill or procedure is pretty much the same. One will reflect in the other. It's just simply that for the CMS form, there are more pre-settings that you can do, such as this box here, the place of service box, 24A, 24B, excuse me, as well as the days and units. So diagnosis pointer is not something that you want to preset, since that will depend from person to person. On to the General tab. General tab is where you preset your default invoice. I would recommend in general that you leave that to Superbill unless you only do insurance billing with this program, in which case all of your patients would be insurance. Really, what this default invoice, it only matters once you start looking at electronic billing. Electronic billing is something that I will talk about in a completely separate video of its own. So I would recommend leaving Superbill for right now, because we'll take a look at the fact that we'll only want to set up CMS if we're going to do electronic billing for someone. E-billing, definitely leave that off for right now, because you first want to be able to set up your patient's files before you even worry about turning on this e-billing feature. And then everything else here is pretty self-explanatory. This box here is basically the statement that will default to the bottom of your Superbill, so you can modify that and make it whatever you want it to be. We now have the ability of adding a signature image here at the bottom of your Superbill. So if you can create an image of your signature, it has to be like a JPEG format type of file. You can then add this signature image here to this area, and then you can decide to make that the default signature for the main. If it's just if you're a single provider, then you're going to choose main. If you have several providers, then you're going to choose provider, because under each provider setting, if we go back here to our provider, we will see that under each provider setting, we have the option to have their own personal signature. All right, and then here you can preset the tax on your product, and at the bottom here is your cover email for invoicing your email to your patients if you wish to invoice your email to your patients. This is something that we'll talk about probably in a separate video as well. The insurance tab. Insurance tab is pretty self-explanatory. This is where you set up all the insurance company that you're thinking that you'll be dealing with. So let me click on the one that's already existing here. Very basic. Here you just set up the information, and then as you set up patients with these particular insurance companies, you'll see a list here of all the patients connected to that insurance company. Same thing here for the referral source. The referral source is actually something that would be referral physicians. It's for box 17 of the CMS form. So this only relates to the CMS form. We'll look at that again when we set up a patient's file. And this is where you would enter your referral source. Archiving tab is not something that you're going to use right now. In the future, as you have patients, maybe at the end of each year, as you have patients that are no longer active, you can just simply move their file record to this side here. All you have to do is click on the checkbox here, and you can do several at a time. Click on Batch Archive, OK, and it will just move their file to this non-active area here. To bring them back, same thing. Check the box and archive, and they're back to your active list. I do recommend that at the end of the year you do so. I've noticed that people don't do that and end up having huge list of patients, most of which are not active, and I think it's just makes it a little bit clearer to archive those that are no longer active. Vendors, we have a list of vendors here for your inventory. If you don't find a vendor that you're using, you just simply add it to this list here. All right, so this concludes part 1 of the demo videos. These are your settings. This is where you want to get started, and you can now check our YouTube channel to move on to the next video. Thank you.